I think it's a system now. Oh God, it's a system. Everything is a system, and systems work with or without God. So I think the institution of church is whack. I think how church is ran is whack. I think the religious system and structure is whack. I don't subscribe to it, even though I grew up in it, I benefited from it, but I learned that God is not the church.
All right, welcome to the Church Dropout podcast. My name is Alan. I am the host. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to the Church Dropout. Church Dropout is a podcast where we talk about issues, topics, and teachings related to faith, life, and culture in ways that are sometimes funny, sometimes serious, but always insightful. I am joined by my lovely wife.
Hello.
Lisa.
Hi.
Hey. And if you have not already, please like, rate, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast at. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So I want to talk about some comments that were made by a popular musician in the gospel community, Tye Tribbett. He recently, I think, won a Grammy for his latest album. I haven't heard it. I haven't heard anything from Tye Tribbett in a long time.
Oh, wow. Yeah, me either.
And he was on The Breakfast Club, right? With Charlemagne and DJ Envy, and Jess Hilarious, I think. And they were, interviewing him based on his album, his career. I think it was mainly because he
won the Grammy.
He won the Grammy and his album, his new album. And so, undoubtedly, him being a gospel artist, the topic of church came up. And they were asking him some questions about church and about pastoring, about a lot of things that had to do with church. And he had some very choice things to say in response to some of the things that they brought up in the interview. And so yeah, I want to talk about it a little bit. Okay. People reacted in interesting ways to me. To be honest, it's always pretty interesting to me to see how Christians respond to other Christians.
Yeah.
And sort of Monday morning quarterback. Do you know what that is?
I know what a quarterback is.
Well, but no, just kind of, commenting on it after it happens in terms of, you get to see the aftermath and you say it should have been done this way, should have been done that way. You get to, kind of critique it. Right, from the outside after the fact. And so a lot of Christians responded in a lot of different ways.
Okay.
And so before I get into any of that, did you watch the whole interview? Yeah, I watched the whole interview as well. What did you think, just in general?
Honestly, I started looking at Tye a little different. You know what I mean? I feel like I see
Do you call him Tye? I mean, do you know him? I kind of look at Tye a little bit different. Lord, you on a first name basis?
I don't know him. I just have a hard time saying his last name.
Yeah.
I don't.
I think it's Tribbett, but that's the way.
And it just together, the two together, it's just
right.
It's just a tongue. So
I got you. Yeah, I feel you.
The homeboy Tye. So anyways, yeah, I feel like I see maturity or growth in him. I see a difference than what I seen. I mean, of course, I know he's older and stuff like that, but I see a difference in him that, I wasn't seeing when he first came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He seemed a little bit to me, a little extreme, you know what I mean? To where now I feel like he's a lot more, he's more humble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So no, I thought it was a really good interview. I thought he carried himself well. I thought, he answered the questions well, but not only well, but honest. You know what I mean? And real. So I thought it was good.
All right. So I don't know what the break is going to look like, but interruptions, children interruptions. You probably heard the child screaming in the background because they have to go poop. And apparently.
Really?
Well, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's a part of life, so. Anyhow.
If it's so a part of life, why you always get mad when he got to go?
Because somebody got to be in there with him and don't nobody want to smell that. So
Or wipe it.
yeah, yeah, it's not cool. Not cool. So you're talking about Tye Tribbett and his maturity.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely much older now. Has gone through a lot. You know, I'm not going to bring all of that up because I don't think it's relevant to to this conversation here. But yeah, you know, definitely, you know, has some years, you know, on him in terms of maybe some things that, you know, he's dealt with and, you know, how that, So it is a different Tye Tribbett. You know, he was a kid before. I mean, when he started, I don't even know how I say he's a kid. I don't know how close in age we were because I know he's younger, right?
I think he might be your age, if not older.
Here we go. We about to get toasted.
I know.
But
I didn't even say an age. I didn't say a number this time. So
yeah.
But I think I'm right on this one.
He's older than me.
So that's what I said. He's either your age or older. That's what I said.
He's 48.
See?
Wow. Wow. Yeah, he's about 15 years older than me. I ain't telling you. So yeah, you know, I thought it was you know, a pretty good, you know, interview. I thought it was an interesting interview. You know, like I said, people have a tendency to kind of look back at it and, you know, obviously, you know, answer questions, you know, say how they would answer those questions differently. And, you know, I don't think he was expecting to be asked some of the things that he was asking, which obviously would affect how he responds. And people, you know, say a lot of things, but this is probably, I don't know, I'm just going to say it, you know, anyway, I'm not going to say it. I was going to say something, but I was just going to be a little bit of it.
It was like a cliffhanger.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, people always say what they would say in those situations, but they'll never be in that situation. You know what I mean? Like, it's just kind of like, well, if I was there, I would, you know, have preached the gospel and, you know, all of this type stuff. And, you know, it was a conversation, you know what I mean? And I'm sure if he watched it, he probably said, you know, I probably could have said some things differently, you know, just, you know, anyway. So a lot of things were said. A lot of people had a lot of different comments. And, it's just interesting to me how Christians respond to stuff like this, man. Like, I just, you know, people were on him about the things that he said. I don't think people really addressed what he said as much as they kind of answered a question or said something that he didn't say, right?
Like what?
Well, you know, he said in there that the system of the church is whack. And he, you know, how the church acts or does is whack. But, you know, Christians are saying that, you know, Tye Tribbett said that the church is whack. He didn't say the church is whack.
Right.
And I'm just not sure what we hear or what we're listening to.
And even after he said all that, he doubled back and even said, you know, I'm not saying the church is whack. I'm saying he even said that.
Yeah, he
out of his mouth.
clarified it. And let me say this. And let me say this before we get into it. I'm not saying I agree with everything Tye Tribbett said or even how he expressed it. Not that matters. You know, that's my computer. So I'm not, you know, saying that everything he did was correct, but, you know, at least get what the man said right. And truthfully, I understand the intent of what he was communicating and what he was saying. I think it was pretty clear.
Yeah.
You know, the bone that he had to pick when it came to the church. And I heard Christians saying a lot of stuff, you know. One response that I looked at, you know, and I can get this to some degree, but they were saying, you know, this is not a conversation he should have had on the Breakfast Club. This is kind of an inside conversation. This is a conversation that you have, like a family conversation
within Christians.
Within the church. You know, you don't go outside the church and have a conversation about, you know, the church with people who don't have an awareness of they can't nuance the things that you're talking about. Like, I get that to some degree, you know, but I'm a little bit different when it comes to stuff like that. You know what I mean? Because I'm going to push back in that sense and say, look how the church is responding to what he said now. Where is he going to have this conversation with the church about the church?
Right.
Okay. Like, you know, it's not like these conversations are welcome.
Right.
Right.
And he even brought them into it by saying, okay, so what are the reasons that, deter you from going into the building?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. And that's what I'm saying. I thought he was honestly, I thought he was pretty thoughtful in terms of, trying to understand before I answer this question, let me see where you are so that I can understand the questions that you have versus just making plain statements. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I thought he was doing his best to be relatable in terms of, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I understand. I empathize with, how you view the church because some of those things are true, and trying to give them a different perspective. Now, whether or not we agree on the perspective that he was giving, again, I just think, again, it's interesting. I heard one, person say, and we could talk about what he said too, but anyway, I heard one person say, the way or what he was saying is because, people who feel like that about the church, and what he's saying is that they don't like authority. They want to avoid accountability. And I'm just like, where are we getting this stuff from?
Okay, for one, the reason why doesn't make sense is because he's the pastor, right?
Yes.
He's the pastor of his church.
Yeah.
That's online. And so who is the authority that they're talking about? The authority of the
idea,
big church?
Yeah, the idea is that when people say that they hate the church, they're saying that they hate the church because they really don't like the authority. And the things that he was expressing had a lot to do with the religiousness, the tradition, or, the things that happen in church, and, wanting to be free, and how sometimes the church could be binding. And again, but all of this is really just based in, speculation in terms of, or I don't know. I just think it's fear. I just think Christians, I don't know why, if I could be completely honest with you. I don't know why Christians are reluctant to engage conversations about the issues with the American church. Why there's such a strict opposition to any type of critique or dialogue about what the church gets wrong. You understand what I'm saying? And the reaction to that, right? To the point where we're not even interacting with what's being said. You know what I mean? We're straw manning it and addressing the person instead of addressing the argument. Right?
Right.
And so, so for those of you who don't know, you can go to the Breakfast Club and listen to what Tye Tribbett said. I'll try to play it. I'll probably play it at the beginning of this video, but Breakfast Club copyrights everything. So, but Tye Tribbett was asked about the church, and he said that the system, very clear, the system of the church is whack, right? How the church does things basically today is whack. You know what I mean? And, he has some issues with the way the church functions in today's culture. That's the summation of it, right?
Yeah.
So he very, very clearly didn't say that the church is whack. He said the system is whack, which is a very different thing, right?
Right.
And I think what's telling and what's interesting is how people responded is making the church gathered synonymous with the church people. Because this is what he was trying to make a dichotomy, or he was, kind of giving a difference to, was like, we've made church about
the church,
Yes.
about the institution.
Right. And
instead
not
of
about the people.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we emphasize the institution of the church rather than emphasizing what the church is, right? Or who the church is, right? So we pay more attention to what it is than who it is, and we end up, overemphasizing the building or overemphasizing the structure or how we do things versus what the church is. And I think honestly, if you listen to his conversation, he grew up very religious. He grew up in a church community that he rebelled against, right? So he's seen church from the inside.
Yeah.
Okay. He's seen all of the workings. He's seen some hypocrisy within his own family, hypocrisy within the church. He's seen kind of, behind the curtain of what it means to do church and not be the church.
Right.
He's seen how the institution of church wrecks people. You know what I mean? How the institution of church becomes the most important piece to the point where you'll let your family get broken down to continue to play church on the other end. So a lot of this is birthed out of his experiences.
Right.
And I think he was pretty clear that like the system of the church is broken and whack. And I don't see nothing wrong with that.
You know what I think? I wonder if when people have an issue with somebody saying something against the church or about Christianity with people that they feel the conversation shouldn't be with, I wonder if they think that they're talking against God. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that they think that they're going against, like by you saying, so it's just like, okay, if I'm talking bad about you, I'm not just talking bad about you. I'm talking bad about your last name and your family and your lineage. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know how our parents,
Absolutely.
they're like, you're a this, you're a that, you need to carry yourself like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I feel like maybe they feel like, him talking bad is like talking bad about God.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's a part in there when he was talking and he was asking them, he was like, but do you think people have a problem with God?
Yeah.
He said, like, he asked that, like, to differentiate what he's saying between the church, you know what I mean? And having a relationship with God and you being the church.
Yeah. He actually said
that.
He actually said when, he said the church is not God.
Right. Right.
And I think what you're hitting on, I think is part of the problem with how we view church. And this is why I think people are getting upset because it's just so interesting to me. In the same sentence, these individuals will say that they understand that the church is the people. And then in the same sentence, they'll abandon that and then emphasize the gathering or the building, right? And so they're getting the gathering, the form of church, mixed up with the essence or what church is.
Yeah.
Those are two different things, right?
Right.
And so we've also, in American church culture, have made how we do church central to the essence of what church is, right? And meaning that we've almost, in my whole the deconstruction thing, once I had to really work hard to get to understand, even though I knew this theologically, I knew it intellectually, that the church is not something that's outside of me. It's not something that I attend. It's not something that I go to.
Right.
It is my identity that we together collectively are the people of God. And so in this particular instance, this is what's happening. People are making the gathering synonymous with what the church is, and they confuse what the church does with what the church is, and then they start to attack anything that comes against the church.
Right.
And so I heard one guy who was talking about, man, that's a dangerous thing when you start talking about the church. And I said, well, he's not talking about the church.
Right. Right.
He's talking about something very specific.
Right.
He's talking about the institution, the way, the form, the idea of how we do church here And that would include the traditions. And I'm not talking about the biblicals. I'm talking about the traditions that we lay on top of it.
Right.
You know, you have to wear a suit, you know, you know what I mean? Just all the traditions that come along with it. There's holiness on the outside, but, you know, foul on the on the inside. You know, these things that exist within the institution of church. You see what I'm saying? And so he's not talking about the bride of Christ. He's talking about how the bride of Christ gathers, and how they gather, I have an issue with.
Right.
There's no problem with that to me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And here's the other thing about this too. And you know, I'm sure you got other things you want to say too, but I like stuff like this. Here you got Charlemagne, Envy, Jess, hilarious, right? Now, I don't feel comfortable saying Jess. It just sounds weird to say Jess without saying hilarious, because
it goes
together. Yeah, yes, but you don't want to say Tye Tribbett. But anyway, but here you have them talking about church and the essence and what really is the church, and then you have in the same conversation, you have 3 people give their perspectives on how they view church and what church is to them. This is like gold to me. This tells me how people think about the church, so that we can help to reshape what Christianity looks like in the public space, right? So you got Charlemagne, who says, you know, he goes to church on Sunday online. You know what I mean? And for him, church is not about truth.
Right.
He didn't say that, but he said it's about experience. It's about what he feels. Right? Then you have DJ Envy, who's like, I hated church because it was so long. So now we could just have breakfast together and go to church. And we can go to different churches, and we don't have to be there for 3 or 4 hours, which is very interesting, right? Because his podcast sometimes is 2 hours. You don't have a problem with people listening to your podcast for 2 hours, but you got a problem. But see, here we go. Like that, what's important to us, we sacrifice for. So these are ways to, you know. So anyway, then you had Jess Hilarious, who was like, more on the religious tip. You know what I mean? Of I need to be at church.
Seem a little bit more traditional.
It's more traditional, right? And, you know, and I need to be in church, and I grew up in this church, and I can't do the online thing. I need to see a pastor. But her life, as far as we can see, isn't necessarily aligning with what we see in scripture, right? So you have these 3 perspectives of people talking about their experience with church, which really highlights the problem and why we shouldn't talk about church that way. Because these people believe that you can have a relationship with God's church and not be a part of the church, because they think that the church exists outside of them. Right? This is Christian doctrine that they're actually expressing. If we keep saying we go to church, if we keep making the wrong distinction between what the church is and what the church does, how can we expect people who are outside the church, right, to understand what it truly means to be the church? You see what I'm saying? And so this is why, like, these conversations to me are like super important. You know what I mean? Is because this is an opportunity to correct that. And see, and this is why I don't have an issue with what he said.
And who he said it to.
If it's right, it's right. And I'm supposed to defend the church because I'm not in the presence of other believers. And I might be affirming what somebody believes. Well, if I'm affirming what they wrongly believe about the church, that's probably the right thing to do.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? You know, and so So yeah, I just don't get it. I just don't understand. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that everything that he said in there was true. He said some stuff that, didn't make too much sense or maybe could have been expressed much differently. I mean, he contradicted himself a little bit. He went from work strictly online to, well, I meet with all the people but I admit I don't know all of the people.
Well, I think he's because he did explain how it wasn't that he started online. He explained that
correct.
he had a church, a building, I'm sorry, but they couldn't use the building. So then that's how they ended up online.
Absolutely.
So it wasn't like he went out to have an online church. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking by him saying that, like, I don't know all my members and I don't go out and talk to them. I think he's talking about when he was
absolutely,
in the building.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, and that's another discussion in and of itself. I mean, can we do church online? Like, is that, I hate using that terminology, but can we gather online? But I think all of this really boils down to even what Tye Tribbett was having issues with is that everything really boils down to the identity of the church.
Yeah.
What is the church?
Yeah.
Like, what is it? And discussing or finding out or boiling down what is the church then determines what we do. And I think that's, to me, is where the foundation is.
Right.
With the church right now. We're trying to correct people's understanding of church when truthfully that's not even the biblical understanding of what church is.
Right.
Now, you know me, I'm not for any form of church, meaning like I don't have an issue with gathering on Sunday. I don't have an issue with the mega church. I don't have an issue with the mini church. I don't have an issue with
is that what they call it?
Nah.
The mini church?
Nah. I don't have an issue with house churches. I don't have an issue with park churches. I don't have an issue with any of that. I think that there are some types of church or types of gatherings that are more conducive to what the scripture calls us to do than others. This is why I'm not a big fan of mega churches, which is why I'm not a fan, really. Can we really have online church? You know what I mean? Because it's not about, church is about fellowship and relationship. It's not about preaching and singing.
Yeah, right.
Okay? So if I'm not in fellowship and community, gathering with people,
Right.
what am I doing online?
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? Like so that's why I said we need to understand what church is. We can't argue the style of church until we understand what the essence of church is. And if the essence of church is community, is fellowship, breaking bread with one another, meeting each other's needs, word together, sharing, you got to have proximity for that. You got to have proximity.
Yeah.
We got to be close enough for those things to happen. So then the question is how do we healthily live out what the New Testament says the church does in a way that brings about what God desires for the church to do, right? You know what I mean? And so that's why for me, like I don't think mega churches are the most healthy aspect of that. You can do that, but I can't. It's hard to go to a church every Sunday when you sit next to somebody different every week. Right. You can't touch the pastor. You don't know the pastor. You don't know what's going on.
And you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the video we did. Tim
Keller.
Okay.
Yeah, we never released it though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll redo it. But yeah.
Okay.
But
okay.
yeah.
And how he talked about how, when the church grew to a certain size, he wanted to break it up.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and that's the one thing that popped in my mind with, when Tye was saying, Tye Tribbett.
It's okay. You could call him Tye.
Tye.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
But when Tye was saying that, when he was trying to tell Jess Hilarious that, well, I can't, I don't know all my members. I can't,
Yeah.
touch everybody. Then I think that's when it's a time to be like, you know what, we are getting too big. We need to start breaking this off. It needs to be,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's interesting because in my estimation, this is to me one of the issues we have with the way we think about church today is that we believe that it's the pastor's job to know everybody. See, that's the problem. That's still adopting, to me,
right,
a false view of what the scripture says. Right? I've said this before. One of the dichotomies between the Old Testament and the New Testament is that every believer has the Spirit of God resting in them.
yes,
And when Paul talks about the gifts of the Spirit, we need one another in order for those gifts to operate. Okay, if somebody's speaking in tongues, there's somebody else who's interpreting. Like it's community.
It's a body.
It's a body, different parts, right?
Yep.
And so, just it's not the pastor's job, right, to know everybody. It's the body's job to one another and to know each other. But because we do church a certain way, the expectation is that the pastor is the one who's spiritual.
Right.
He's the priest. He's the oracle. He's the one who's close to God, and I need him. So like when Jess Hilarious was saying, oh, when I'm going through it, I need the pastor to pray for me. You see what I'm saying? Now, the scripture does speak of those type things. James says if you're sick and, call the elders of the church, you know what I mean? Like to pray for you. I get that. But
on the other hand, the pastor was her uncle.
Yeah. Well, or was she saying he was an uncle, or was she saying like it's like her uncle?
No, I believe she said it was her uncle.
Okay, uncle pastor. And that happens too in church too. That's to be some crazy stuff. Kids, that's close to the pastor. You still got to call him pastor. So it's uncle pastor.
Uncle pastor.
Lord have mercy. See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
But the reality is
Grandpa pastor.
Grandpa pastor. Pastor shark. So that's just how it would be too.
Oh my God.
And that's just how religious black folks is with church too. I'm telling you. I mean, serious, I was calling pastor on the golf course. I couldn't call him.
I know.
You know what I mean? It's just crazy to me, right? Yeah. But the idea, and there's nothing wrong with reverence.
Right.
But that's, I don't even like the term reverence because that's something that's really for God only. Okay? Right. But anyway, I say all that to say the idea of the New Testament church is to one another and that it's the church that meets the church's needs. And that all of these roles are not a hierarchy. You okay?
I'm thinking about Pastor Sharp.
All right, we gonna go on at the end.
You know, I be sitting in there every morning with these boys.
I know.
I'm listening to all these songs. Now you're gonna have me saying Pastor Shark. Oh my God.
Yeah, but anyway, I think. Honestly, here I go again. Christians just need to relax to me, and also give people grace.
Right.
Like, like this is the guy, I'm not sure he was intending to go there and to have a conversation to be grilled about the church. Now, should he be prepared? He's a pastor, all of this. Listen, okay, I get all of that. But come on now.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And again, this is the importance of having conversation. Should we not tell the truth? Of course.
Right.
No, nobody's denying that.
Right.
But we also got to know where people are in order to be able to have those types of conversations.
Exactly. Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with affirming what the church is not.
Right.
And the truth is, the system of the church is whack. It is.
It is.
It is. It's broken.
Yeah.
The American church has issues.
Right.
This is why we're seeing everything that we're seeing in the American church today. From pastors falling, it doesn't matter how conservative and how biblically literate you are. It doesn't matter. Pastors are falling who are on the quote unquote liberal side of Christianity and on the conservative side of Christianity.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we've forsaken our first love. And as I've said before, this is just me. As I've said before, we need to forsake the form and return to essence and ask the question, what is the church? And then build on that cornerstone.
Yeah.
The cornerstone of Christ, build on that understanding so that we can, again, have healthy conversations with people and actually give a biblical idea on what the church is so that people can understand what it means to be the church, what it means to be the bride of Christ in the world. All right. Well, that is it for Church Dropout. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Yes.
Like I said, oh man, I don't know what just happened there. There's just screen went black.
Uh-oh.
Well, anyway, I'm just going to keep rolling.
All right.
But thank you again for tuning into the Church Dropout podcast. Like I said, if you have not liked, rated, or subscribed, please do so. We love to hear what you have to say. So drop a comment, drop a line. We'd certainly appreciate it. That's it for this episode. Any last words?
Good night.
Pastor Shark. Out.
Pastor Shark, Pastor.